My 37-year-old wife used to work with her father in business. Because of this, they were both very rich. Since I'm 34 and married into her family, I'm also rich. I got close to her father, and he would show me a lot of business-related things to help me understand them better. My wife started to pull away from me after 6 years of marriage. As part of her job, she would drive to clients' homes to bring goods and talk about improvement options. It was clear that being a smart, nice, and beautiful woman helped business. My wife went too far with this idea of starting a business to help people. She started to seem very far away from me one day, and she got really excited when she had to visit a certain client. It was my choice to tell her dad how I felt and why I noticed. He told me to sneakily follow her to the client's house. I thought this was a sneaky answer from a guy who is usually honest, but I did what he said. I had no idea that it would be the worst day of my life. I parked across the street from the house and watched her go inside. Our customer information says the name of the customer was Doug. Even though he wasn't married, would that stop him from seeing a married woman? Most likely not. I could already picture terrible things that were going to happen, and they weren't too far from what I was going to find. I went to the front door. Having thought about the word sneaky for 15 minutes, I chose not to knock before leaving. I slowly opened the front door and looked inside, but mostly I just listened. I could just barely make out sounds coming from the second floor. There didn't sound like any business stuff was being said. As I went upstairs, my heart was beating fast, and I began to record on my phone. You could hear them going at it as I got closer to one door. When I opened the door, my wife was having sex with Doug. It turned out to be my worst fear come true. When my wife saw that it was me, she screamed and turned to see who was in the way. It was too late for her, the camera saw everything. She yelled at me to stop filming and let her put on clothes. As I left Doug's house and got into my car, I kept recording. It caught my cries and angry words. I didn't know where else to go, so I drove to my father-in-law's house. When I got there, he treated me like a real dad. He paid close attention as I told him what happened. It was all he could do to watch the video until he heard moans. He agreed with everything I said and even said he was on my side. After 20 minutes, my wife also showed up. She went right into the kitchen and saw us sitting at the table in the dining room. Her dad asked her how long she'd been seeing Doug before she even sat down. Like she did, I looked at him with surprise because I didn't think he would ask that question. I was sure she hadn't done this more than once. Her dad told her he looked at the trip logs, even though she said it was just this one time. Since 11 months ago, she had been going to Doug's house a lot more often than she should have. My jaw dropped, and I looked at her with interest. She was lost for words. It didn't make sense for her to talk and protect her brand. It sounded like she was defending what she did by saying it would be good for business at one point. When he told her she was fired, her dad didn't feel sorry for her. She made a strange sound of shock and began to stutter. She really wanted to keep her job, but what could she say? It was clear that this wasn't the only time she slept with Doug because I had tape of it. Besides lying to me, her father told her that this was not how he wanted his daughter or business partner to act. The real blow that made my wife beg for forgiveness was when he said he was going to stop loving her. Her father already had a mind set on what she did or how much she said she was sorry. The name of her father was on the house she was married to, and he didn't want her to live there. She also couldn't live at his house. She lost her job and had to live in her nice Audi, which wasn't a home. When she called her dad upset one time, he told her she had 11 months to stop what she was doing and think about what she was doing, because he would hate her if she didn't. He ended by telling me I was lucky to have learned the truth and been able to escape. Her dad gave me a choice for her. I could move in with him or live in the house we shared before we got married. He owned a huge house that was about the same size as 2 houses put together. One long walkway ran between the 2 halves. I knew I would be able to keep to myself, but more than that, I thought of him as family and needed his mental support. I chose to keep living in the memorable house but would still go see him every once in a while. I also said yes to becoming a partner in the family business he runs, which he did. All of this has been going on for 7 years now that I work with him. Anyway, I met a wonderful woman since then, and she is now my wife. Life is great now that we have 2 kids together. For my ex, she doesn't have a very good view of life. I can tell because she often writes negative things on Facebook and sends me angry messages. I just show them to my wife, and we laugh about them. She may still have some money, but no one loves or cares for her like I did. Wow, what a crazy story. From what I can tell, your ex thought she had everything and wanted more. She may have begun to believe that she needed more attention and that the client was the best place and time to get it. It was clear that she was being selfish and stupid when she made this choice, which cost her her job and the relationships she cared most about. When she changed how she behaved, you noticed right away and asked your father-in-law for help. After going through this scary thing, I think he made a lot of smart choices. She had nothing left and no one to look out for her. Remember that you should always keep your pride in check and never think that sneaking around to get something done is a good idea. It makes me happy to hear that you have a new family and a close bond with your adopted father. Thank you for sharing your story and the good thing that happened. I hope everything goes well for you, Let's move on to the second story for today. My 38-year-old wife and I have 2 boys. That's when the story starts. Eddie is 11 years old, and his brother Teddy is 7. My wife rushed off to work early one morning that seemed normal. Before my boys went to school, we always have a fun, light-hearted morning chat while I make them food. Eddie seemed to be thinking about something on the way to school. The car ride was a little quiet. He said there was nothing wrong when I asked him. Like always, I dropped them off and went to work. They asked me to pick them up from school after work, so I did. She texted me that she had to stay late at work for a meeting. It made me mad when this happened, but I was used to it by now. For the past 10 years, she stayed late at meetings at least 4 times a month. I began making food for my boys while they did their homework at the table when we got home. Eddie still looked like he was thinking about something, but he did his work and asked me about it. They told me about their day at school while we ate dinner together. Even though it wasn't unusual, this was the last time I would talk and eat dinner with my boys before hearing news that would change my life. Eddie told me he had something to say as we were cleaning up the table. That crack in his voice made it sound like he was going to cry. Eddie shook his head and asked Teddy if he was sure he should tell me. I told them anything was okay to say. Eddie then told me that their mom told her that I wasn't their real dad and that she would take them to see their real dad a few times a month. My jaw fell. He told me about their real dad, and I asked if I knew him. I knew him, he said yes. Uncle Kevin it was. For a short time, I couldn't move. The boys asked me if I was okay, if I was mad, and what I was going to do. I told both of them I loved them when I calmed down. It was my promise to them that I would always be their dad. That made them happy, and they helped me clean up after dinner. I thought about what I was going to do while they went to play. My children were born to my brother. What could have caused this? I didn't believe it and couldn't show it. The boys were told to wait until a certain day to tell Mom that they told me I wasn't their dad. They agreed, but then they didn't seem to remember. Until my wife got home, I sat on the couch and watched the boys play. I told her I was sick and needed to go to sleep as soon as she did. I stayed awake in bed until my wife put the boys to sleep. We slept together, and she checked to see if I was asleep. I claimed to be asleep. I opened her phone when she was asleep. It made my heart beat fast because I had never looked at her phone before. I kept expecting her to wake up. A message app was hidden on the last page of a folder of apps called Utilities. It looked like she didn't want anyone to see it on her phone. In one of her messages, she talked to Kevin. It was like reading a normal chat between a couple in love. They talked about their day, when they were going to meet again, how the boys were, and other things. Texts like, "I love you, I think of you as my husband, the kids are lucky to know their real dad, and I will marry you when the time is right," were also sent. And then there were texts that were sexual. It seems that my wife would tell me she had to work late whenever she and my brother wanted to have sex. That was enough proof for me. Her phone was right in front of me. I felt like the stupidest person in the world for thinking my family and wife were good people. I saved copies of their talks and sent them to myself. He had no choice but to be nice. I hired a private investigator and a lawyer the next day. I had some proof already, but it had to be 100% sure. The lawyer told me I could sue my brother for sleeping with my wife and ending our marriage and get alimony from my ex. I could also keep my house. I should add that a quick DNA test was done on the boys, and it was found that my DNA was a little off. The DNA from my brother was most likely to have a better match. A private eye followed my wife for a month. It was hard for me to act regularly, but I helped make it look like my son hadn't told me the secret. The PI sent me everything he caught at the end of the month. There were 42 shots of my brother, wife, and kids. He kept them together like a family at the park, at his house, and at dinner. It was the strangest and saddest thing I've ever seen. Through his bedroom window, there were also pictures of my wife and brother. That's commitment. The PI must have climbed a tree. The pictures were very clear. It was time for my son to tell his mom that I knew the truth now that I had proven it. I told him to tell her and Uncle Kevin the next time they came to visit. When my wife left 4 days later with the kids, she said they were going to see her mom. It's not that I hate her, but that she hates me too. It's likely that she will never get over the fact that her daughter had children with her husband's brother and claimed them as her own. They left for 30 minutes and then came back home. They got to Kevin's just in time for Eddie to tell them I knew the truth and run back home. It was too late, though. I had already locked the front door and left a note. "It's time for all of you to move in with Kevin," it said. "Mommy and Daddy will be getting divorce papers and court summonses there soon." My wife yelled and banged on the door. It made me mad that it made her so upset. By sleeping with him, having his kids, and having a secret connection with him for a long time, she chose my brother over me. She also told the boys not to tell me anything about it. She cried for an absurdly long time by the front door, but I didn't want to go outside and talk to her about anything. Kevin finally showed up to pick them all up. During the divorce process and court dates, they stayed with him. I kept my house and one payment of alimony to my wife. I beat my brother in court and didn't have to pay child support. He had to pay me a huge amount of money for cheating on my wife and ending our marriage. My ex-girlfriend's friendship with Kevin ended when I got rich and single. Living with the boys all the time must have been different. Most likely, the worry of going to court and losing a lot of money also didn't help. My ex moved out of Kevin's house and into her mom's house after only 1 year. Before, during, and after that year, my ex would text me at least once a day to check on me or say she was sorry. Even though I got to see the boys, it wasn't the same as when we used to be together. I know they enjoyed it. My ex-girlfriend saw the change and felt bad about it. That's right. It's been 2 years since everything happened, and the boys still don't like how their mom changed who their dad is. She feels terrible about what she did, but she has no choice. She is still living with her mom and raising them. She hasn't gone out on a date yet. Even though my brother doesn't talk to me, my dad told me that he feels bad about what he did. I just started going out with someone else, and I like her. She already has a kid and wants more. She cares about others, is honest, and is kind. If she doesn't become my wife, I know there is always hope for the best. Oh my, I'm so sorry your wife did that to you. She knew she was having your brother's kids while you were still married and did it anyway. You don't hear stories like this very often, but they do happen. It's great that you can talk to your dad, but you seem to have made most of your own good choices. You took the time to think about what to do next, and the steps you took made your break the best. It's a good thing your wife didn't try to kill you or blame you for something. This happens all the time. Thank you for telling me about what happened. I hope you were able to get better.